What's up, y'all? Hope you guys are having a great Wednesday so far. You know what? I just want to say thank you so much for praying and being a part of this ministry with us. The last couple of weeks have been weird. I mean, you guys had probably noticed that on TV and just the Speedway, things were different, no fans. Of course, we missed all of y'all being there, but at the end of the day, here's why I'm so grateful to serve in this ministry and to serve alongside y'all is because of your prayers. I'll be honest, it was just so good how many doors God opened for Chuck and I. The conversations we got to have, just how smooth things went with us. You know, it just seems like more and more walls are coming down, paths are being paved, and God is opening opportunities for us to share of His goodness, to reflect His goodness. You got to know that it's a highly resistant culture. And anyway, I put it because of your prayers. You praying for this community is making a difference. So please continue in that, especially as we go to Gateway. Man, we're just so grateful and honored for all that. And hey, thanks for joining in on our Wednesday Wisdoms. It's so great meeting so many of y'all and saying thank you. And this week we're going to jump into 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 18. But just to recap last week where Chuck was, if you didn't see it, man, it's awesome. Make sure and go back and watch Chuck's from last weekend. And kind of the big idea is, you know, there's gonna be suffering, but when you suffer, have a good reason for it, and that reason's Jesus. You know, don't suffer over stupidity. Suffer well, and there's going to be suffering. This whole letter is about suffering. And suffering well, that was written to people who were being burned alive by the emperor. Like, there's suffering all around. There's suffering all around of us now. And so, you know, having a reason that when you're walking through the fire to pointing people to Jesus, man, that is so powerful. And so as we find ourselves this week in verse 18, really through 22, it's simple. Let me just start out. You know, for Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the spirit. You know, there's a lot right there in verse 18, just number one, that Jesus died for us. Jesus suffered for us. The righteous for the unrighteous. We are not righteous without Jesus. In fact, we're a mess without Jesus. I know what I've done. I know where I've been. I know the thoughts that I've had. And frankly, I was a mess. You know, and Jesus, his suffering paved the way for me. His suffering made me alive. You know, oftentimes we treat Christianity like, well, you'll be a better person, or so-and-so met Jesus and he's better now, or it's not about being a better person. Christianity doesn't make you a better person. It makes you a new person. You know, Paul writes elsewhere in 2 Corinthians 5:17 that those in Christ are new. And that's what Peter says right here. He says, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the spirit. Christianity is about dead people becoming alive. I was dead until Jesus made me alive. And you know, here's the thing. He goes on later and he starts pointing to baptism. He says, baptism, which corresponds to this, now saves you not by removing dirt, but from the body as an appeal to God for a good conscience through the resurrection of Christ. That baptism is that picture of dying. And if you haven't taken that step, I just can't help but ask why. It's that reflection. It is your way of saying, God, I'm dying to myself. I'm living for you. You know, when you think of the act of going underwater and then coming out of water, that's the closest picture of death that we have. You can't breathe, you can't see, and you're being raised to new life. You know, when you get baptized, you've got an audience of one. You got an audience of one, and there is a party going down in heaven. And so I just want to invite you, if you haven't taken that step, to take that step. You know, there's a lot of people that push back, oh, do I really need to get baptized? Some people would argue, are you even saved if you haven't been baptized? I'm not here to address any of that. I'm simply saying this, that when you meet Jesus, you go from being dead to alive. Baptism is a way of showing that to the world, but is a way of solidifying your relationship with the Spirit. It's like I can love my wife for the rest of my life, But how I showed her my love for her and my devotion to her is by getting married. And that's kind of the same way of baptism. It's a way of reflecting our commitment to Jesus, to say, God, I'm dying to myself. I'm being made alive in you. That because of what Jesus went through, because of Jesus' suffering, we are made alive. You know, and we got to remember that even when we're suffering, when we're going through hard times, that you know what? God is shaping and molding us through it. So, hey, you know what? Thanks y'all so much for joining us today. Continue to read through 1 Peter, man. It is such a great letter. There is so much wisdom, so much goodness packed in there for all of us. And man, I hope these have been a blessing to y'all. Have a wonderful Wednesday.